There is a moment in every battle when the chaos fades and only the mechanical rhythm of survival remains. For the American machine gunner, that rhythm was the steady, lethal cadence of a Browning .30 caliber, a sound that could mean salvation for his comrades and annihilation for his enemies. In the brutal autumn of 1944, in the fog-shrouded Vosges mountains of eastern France, one man became that rhythm incarnate. Private Wilburn K. Ross, a coal miner's son from Kentucky, found himself alone against 8 waves of German elite alpine troops. With only his light machine gun and the ammunition he could carry, he held the line for 5 hours, killing or wounding at least 58 enemy soldiers and saving the remnants of his company from destruction. Ross was not alone in this grim fraternity. Across the Pacific, on the hellish island of Guadalcanal, Marine Sergeant John Basilone manned his machine gun for 3 days without sleep or food. His hands burned raw from changing searing hot barrels. In Italy, Technical Sergeant Charles Kelly burned out for automatic rifles in a single engagement, using mortar shells as improvised grenades when his ammunition ran dry. These men were not superhuman. They were ordinary Americans thrust into extraordinary circumstances, armed with a weapon that demanded physical strength, technical proficiency, and an almost inhuman capacity for endurance. The machine gunner occupied a unique position on the battlefield. He was simultaneously the most vulnerable and the most powerful soldier in his unit, a primary target for enemy fire. He was also the linchpin of his squad's defensive capability. This is the story of the American machine gunner. In World War II, a story of firepower and fragility, of individual courage and collective survival. It is a tactical and psychological exploration of what it meant to be the man behind the gun, the man who held the line when everything else failed. To understand the heroism of men like Ross, Basilone, and Kelly, one must first understand the weapon they wielded and the tactical doctrine that defined their role on the battlefield. The American machine gun was not just a tool of war, it was a product of industrial ingenuity and a philosophy of overwhelming firepower. The Browning automatic rifle, or BAR, was the standard light machine gun of the American infantry squad. Designed by John Moses Browning in 1917, it was a weapon that served through multiple wars. It fired the .3006 Springfield cartridge from a 20-round magazine, weighing approximately 19 pounds, while portable enough for a single soldier to carry. It was heavy and cumbersome, and its limited magazine capacity meant that sustained fire required a skilled gunner who could manage ammunition consumption carefully. The M1919 Browning machine gun was a different beast entirely. It was a medium machine gun, designed to be mounted on a tripod for sustained fire. It fired the same .3006 ammunition but used a belt-fed system, allowing for continuous fire as long as ammunition was available. The M1919 had a rate of fire of approximately 400 to 600 rounds per minute, though specialized aircraft versions like the NM2 could reach 1,200 to 1,500 rounds per minute. The ground version was heavier, more stable, and capable of delivering devastating suppressive fire against enemy positions. In the early years of the war, American machine gunners relied on the Browning M1917, a water-cooled heavy machine gun that could fire indefinitely as long as water was available to cool the barrel. But as the war progressed and mobility became paramount, the air-cooled M1919 became the standard. It was lighter, more maneuverable, and better suited to the fast-paced defensive operations that characterized the American advance across Europe and the Pacific. The tactical doctrine for American machine gunners was built around the concept of fire and maneuver. The machine gun was the base of fire, the element that pinned the enemy down while riflemen flanked and assaulted their positions. In the defense, machine guns were positioned to create interlocking fields of fire, often in conjunction with other weapons like mortars and artillery. The gunner was expected to stay at his post, even under the heaviest enemy fire, providing the firepower necessary to repel assaults. The psychological demands of this role were immense. The machine gunner was a primary target. His position was often marked by the distinctive muzzle flash of his weapon, and enemy soldiers were trained to concentrate fire on machine gun nests. The gunner had to remain calm under fire, to reload and change barrels while bullets whizzed past his head, to continue firing even as his comrades fell around him. This required a particular kind of man. The Marine Corps, in particular, selected machine gunners for their physical strength and psychological resilience. They were often larger men, capable of carrying the weight of the weapon and its ammunition across miles of difficult terrain. They were trained to operate as a team, with an assistant gunner to feed belts and a squad of riflemen to protect the position. The machine gunner was also a symbol. He was the embodiment of American industrial power, the tangible expression of the nation's ability to project overwhelming force. When a machine gun opened fire, it was not just a man shooting a weapon. It was a nation asserting its might. The sound of a Browning machine gun was a sound of reassurance to American troops and a sound of terror to the enemy. The operational realities of machine gun warfare in World War II were brutal and unforgiving. The gunner's life was one of constant physical strain, psychological pressure, and the ever-present threat of death. The first challenge was mobility. The machine gun was heavy. The bar weighed almost 20 pounds. The M1919 weighed over 30 pounds on its tripod. Ammunition added significantly to the load. A single 250-round belt of .30 caliber ammunition weighed over 10 pounds. A gunner and his assistant might carry hundreds of rounds into battle, often over rough terrain and under enemy fire. In the Pacific Theater, where Marines fought in dense jungles and on coral islands, the weight of the machine gun was a constant burden. Once in position, the gunner had to prepare his firing position. This meant digging a foxhole or constructing a sandbag emplacement. The position had to provide protection for the gunner while allowing a clear field of fire. It had to be camouflaged to avoid detection by enemy observers, and it had to be positioned to cover the most likely enemy avenues of approach. The nature of machine gun warfare was defined by the need for sustained fire. In the attack, the machine gun provided suppressive fire, keeping the enemy's heads down while riflemen advanced in the defense. It was the primary weapon for breaking up enemy assaults. The gunner had to be able to fire for extended periods, often under intense enemy fire. This required a well-trained team. The assistant gunner was responsible for feeding belts into the weapon, ensuring a steady supply of ammunition. He also helped change barrels when they became overheated. The barrel of an M1919 would become dangerously hot after several hundred rounds of sustained fire. A good crew could change a barrel in seconds, minimizing the downtime. The gunner also had to be a skilled marksman. While the machine gun was often used for suppressive fire, aimed fire was essential for neutralizing specific targets. The gunner had to be able to adjust his fire based on the range and direction of the enemy. He had to be able to walk his fire onto targets, using tracers to correct his aim. The psychological pressure of being a machine gunner was immense. The gunner was a high-value target. Enemy snipers and mortar crews would concentrate their fire on known or suspected machine gun positions. The gunner had to remain at his post even when under fire, to continue firing even when his position was being shelled. This required a level of courage and discipline that few soldiers possessed in the European theater. Where the fighting was often at close quarters, the machine gunner faced a different set of challenges. The hedgerows of Normandy and the forests of the Ardennes provided excellent cover for enemy infantry, making it difficult to establish clear fields of fire. The gunner often had to fire at targets that were barely visible, relying on sound and instinct to guide his fire. In the Pacific Theater, the challenges were different again. The jungle terrain limited fields of fire, and the Japanese often attacked at night, using infiltration tactics to get close to American positions. The machine gunner had to be alert at all times, ready to respond to sudden assaults in the darkness. The turning points in the battles where American machine gunners held the line were often defined by sheer psychological indifference. Not just about firing a weapon, it was about withstanding the relentless pressure of an enemy that refused to break. Wilburn Ross's stand in the Vosges Mountains on October 30th, 1944, was a textbook example of this psychological warfare. Ross's company had taken heavy casualties, losing 55 of its 88 men. The survivors were pinned down by German alpine troops who were determined to annihilate them. Ross moved to a forward position, 10 yards beyond his company's riflemen, and set up his machine gun. He was completely exposed, an open target for German marksmen and artillery fire. And yet he held steady for 5 hours. A U.S. officer who witnessed the battle later described Ross's position as seeming to be on fire because of the explosions all around him. Wave after wave of German soldiers attacked, and Ross repelled them all with well-aimed machine gun fire. At one point, he grabbed a rifle from a wounded soldier nearby. A German bullet struck the rifle, rendering it useless, but Ross was unharmed. He throwed that thing down, he later recalled. And I had that machine gun pouring. When his machine gun temporarily ran out of ammunition, Ross refused to abandon his post. He merely shook his head when ordered to withdraw. German troops crawled as close as 4 yards to his position, preparing to toss grenades into his emplacement. At that moment, a fresh supply of ammunition arrived. Ross opened up as they swarmed him, firing in short bursts. In less than a minute, I saw 50 Germans fall dead or wounded around his machine gun, an officer reported. When the enemy turned and ran, corpses were piled high around the gun. This was not just a physical battle, it was a battle of wills. The Germans were elite alpine troops, trained to fight in difficult terrain. They had overwhelming numerical superiority, but Ross had something they did not have: an absolute refusal to break. He stayed by his gun through the night and the next day, prepared for a possible return by enemy forces. After 36 hours, it was clear that the Germans had abandoned the field. Ross emerged from the battle unscathed. "I was a lucky guy all the way through," he said in 2011, "because they got awful close to me." He had saved his company from destruction, killing or wounding at least 58 German soldiers. In the Pacific, the psychological warfare was even more intense. John Basilone's stand on Guadalcanal in October 1942 lasted 3 days. Basilone, a Marine Sergeant from New Jersey, commanded 2 machine gun sections during a massive Japanese assault. The Japanese had thrown a regiment against his position. The attack was relentless. Coming in wave after wave, Basilone moved a machine gun into position and personally manned it. When the Japanese disabled one of the gun crews, he repaired another gun under heavy fire. When he needed more ammunition, he ran through Japanese lines to get it. Defending himself with his Colt .45, he fought for days, losing his asbestos gloves in the chaos but continuing to handle the searing hot machine gun barrels, sustaining burns on his hands. Nash Phillips, a private who was wounded in the fight, later recalled, Basilone had a machine gun on the go for 3 days and nights without sleep, rest, or food. He was barefooted and his eyes were red as fire. His face was dirty black from gunfire and lack of sleep. His shirt sleeves were rolled up to his shoulders. He had a .45 tucked into the waistband of his trousers. When Basilone finally returned to the United States, he received the Medal of Honor and a hero's welcome. But he was not content to sit on the sidelines. He demanded to return to combat and eventually received his wish. He would be killed on the first day of the invasion of Iwo Jima in February 1945, performing yet another act of heroism that earned him the Navy Cross. These men understood the psychological dimension of their role. The machine gun was not just a weapon. It was a psychological weapon. It demoralized the enemy, breaking their will to fight. It reassured American troops, giving them the confidence to hold their positions. The machine gunner, by holding the line, was fighting a war of nerves as much as a war of bullets. The lessons learned from the bravery of machine gunners like Ross, Basilone, and Kelly had a lasting impact on American military doctrine and technology. The experience of machine gun warfare in World War II highlighted the importance of firepower at the squad level. The American military recognized that the firepower of a single machine gun could be decisive in breaking up enemy assaults or covering the advance of friendly troops. This led to an increased emphasis on machine gun training and a more generous allocation of machine guns to frontline units. The Browning family of weapons, the BAR, the M1919, and the .50 caliber M2 proved to be remarkably robust and effective. They were reliable, powerful, and capable of sustained fire. The M2 in particular was an exceptionally versatile weapon. It was used on aircraft, armored vehicles, and naval vessels, as well as by infantry. Its ability to fire through light cover made it an effective anti-material weapon, and its .50 caliber round was devastating against enemy personnel. The development of the M1919, a lightened version of the M1919, was a direct response to the need for a more portable machine gun. It featured a lighter barrel, a shoulder stock, and a bipod, allowing it to be used as a light machine gun. It was an attempt to bridge the gap between the BAR and the heavier M1919. The experience also influenced the development of the M60 machine gun, which would become the standard American general-purpose machine gun in the post-war era. The M60 was a lightweight, belt-fed weapon that combined the firepower of the M1919 with the portability of the BAR. It was a direct descendant of the lessons learned during World War II. The strategic impact of the machine gunner's role is undeniable. In the European theater, machine gunners were essential for breaking the stalemate of the hedgerow fighting and for holding the line during the German counteroffensive in the Ardennes. In the Pacific, machine gunners were the key to defending against the fanatical Japanese assaults that characterized island warfare. The psychological impact of the machine gunner was equally significant. The machine gunner was a symbol of the determination, of the willingness to stand and fight, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The stories of men like Ross, Basilone, and Kelly were used to inspire American soldiers and to reassure the American public that the war would be won. The story of the American machine gunner in World War II is a story of ordinary men doing extraordinary things. It is a story of courage, endurance, and sacrifice. Wilburn Ross survived the war and lived to be 94 years old. He returned to Kentucky after the war, worked for the State Highway Authority, and later re-enlisted in the Army, serving in the Korean War where he was severely wounded again. He remained in the Army until 1964 and eventually settled in Washington State. When asked about his Medal of Honor, he was characteristically modest. "I was a lucky guy all the way through," he said. John Basilone was not so lucky. He was killed on Iwo Jima, his body found in a field of volcanic ash, his machine gun still in his hands. He had a tattoo on his arm that read, "Death before dishonor." He lived up to those words. Charles Kelly, Commando Kelly, survived the war and returned to Pittsburgh a hero. He had burned out for automatic rifles in a single engagement, had thrown mortar shells as hand grenades, had fired an abandoned anti-tank gun at the enemy. He had done all this and more. These men were not unique. Thousands of American machine gunners served in World War II, and thousands of them performed acts of heroism that were never recorded, never decorated. They held the line so that their comrades could live. The machine gunner's legacy is a complex one. He was a killer, but he was also a protector. He was a symbol of American power, but he was also a man who carried the terrible burden of that power, where he faced the enemy with a weapon that was both his salvation and his curse. In the end, he was a soldier, doing his duty in the most terrible of circumstances. The question that haunts the history of the machine gunner is the same question that haunts all of military history. Why did these men do it? Why did Ross hold his position for 5 hours, alone against 8 waves of German soldiers? Why did Basilone fight for 3 days without sleep, his hands burned raw? Why did Kelly burn out for automatic rifles and throw mortar shells as grenades? The answer is not simple. It involves love of country, loyalty to comrades, and a deeply ingrained sense of duty. But perhaps the most important factor is something that transcends ideology and national identity. It is a refusal to accept defeat, a determination to hold the line no matter the cost. In the end, that is a legacy of the American machine gunner, a testament to the endurance of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity.